you guys juniors and seniors, right? Yeah, I was your age. That's me and my dad. In 1984, that's my first day. Why am I like choked up? I mean, that's my dad. The opportunity to serve in the Army seemed like something that felt meaningful. Like I thought I might like it. I wasn't sure how long I would stay in or any of that. But so that's me on the very, very first day. This is me. My mom. That's me at graduation. There's my dad in the background there, keeping his distance. My parents were divorced. You gotta keep them in that. But so that's graduation. So again, that's 1988. So I'm still not a fully formed adult. So this is me in Panama. It's the Panama Canal. My first deployment. So in the Army, there are lots of different branches of the Army. The ones that you see in the movies are infantry and armor, right? So infantry, those are, they call it the pointy end of the spear. Those are the folks who are doing the missions. For like the first Gulf War, the big tanks, that's the armor branch. And so they're executing big missions. The whole, frankly, some of the other branches would quibble with this, but I feel like all the rest of the Army is designed to support them in their mission. I was a combat engineer, so as a combat engineer, I'm supporting infantry and armor units in their missions. So if they needed something blown up, they'd call me. If they needed an enemy obstacle moved out of the way, they'd call me. If they needed to dig in their command and control tents or nodes or whatever, they'd call me. I mean, me, my unit, the unit I was in. And so we were a support to that force. Depending on the mission, sometimes, you know, it's not like you stand back and wait. They're like, come on, let's go, and you're all in the same boat, so to speak. When I was in Iraq, I was a major in the Army, so I had already been a second lieutenant like I was here, then I was a first lieutenant, then I was a captain. When I deployed, I was a major, and then got promoted to lieutenant colonel after that. So I had already moved up into more administration than doing missions with my platoon. Well, I was stationed in Fort Carson, Colorado. I went there to be a battalion operations officer. So a battalion is about 500 soldiers. You know, I talked about my platoon. There are usually about 3 platoons in a company. There are usually about 3 companies in a battalion. The battalion has a battalion commander, and the battalion commander has an executive officer and an operations officer. So that was my job, was the operations officer, so I planned our training, worked on missions. Like if there's the unit that we support says we're going to accomplish this mission, we need some engineers involved, and I would work on the planning and figure out who it would be and how we would do that. So the first Gulf War, I was a second lieutenant. That was right about the time of that Panama picture. I was in a light infantry division. No tanks, no vehicles, not the right type of unit. So I didn't go to Iraq for the first Gulf War. But the unit I supported in Fort Carson, Colorado was a mechanized infantry division. So a division is 2 more levels up from battalion, so it's big, right? And that division had tanks and armored personnel carriers, so the right kind of equipment for that type of mission. So when things first started, we weren't the first units in. We were behind the first units that went in and, you know, actually did what I think you would look at as conventional warfare against the Iraqi army. Our mission initially was to, we deployed into Kuwait, and from our first main mission, so I was there a year, so right after the initial wave of, when the Iraqi army was defeated, which only took a couple of days, the soldiers basically took off their uniforms, put on civilian clothes, and blended into the civilian population. The military infrastructure was gone. The country, you know, Saddam Hussein was in hiding, and so I'll show you some pictures here in a second. So, you know, what that looked like for the infrastructure. But there were lots of places where there were weapons caches or groups of individuals who had been in the Iraqi army who weren't officially anymore, but were plotting ways to, you know, sort of do a counter or an insurgency type of situation. And so we traveled all the way up into northern Iraq, looking for pockets of resistance, groups of soldiers that were still trying to keep the fight going, or weapons caches that individual insurgents who might want to get those weapons and use them against NATO forces. So we did that all up in northern Iraq, which is gorgeous. Mountainous, water, like this whole region up here, not at all like the deserts down here. We didn't find a whole lot of stuff, to be honest, right? Kind of like the intelligence that took us there in the first place. I think at one time there was a lot of stuff there. The capability and organization of the Iraqi government and military, I think they did a very good job of hiding how poorly things were going. And there may be some parallels to that today in countries that paint a picture, and then when you get inside, if you can see the real deal, it's not as good as it looks and from an organizational standpoint. We transitioned from sort of clear out anyone who was still involved in the fighting to there's a mess left behind. What can we do to help get the country back on its feet? And so we went from supporting infantry and armor battalions to our battalion came back together as its own battalion, and we worked in a little city called Ad Djail. It's right here at this bend. I'll show you some pictures in a sec. But our mission as a battalion now, we weren't supporting other people. We were working with the local government to get things going again. I mean, very basic things. So here's Baghdad, the main road up to, there was a huge U.S. air base at Balad. This is Ad Djail. Our forward operating base was just on the other side of the main road here from Ad Djail. In the history of Iraq, there were times where the citizens weren't happy with the leadership of the country and attempted to assassinate Saddam Hussein. Obviously, they weren't successful. This town was one of them. And the attempt that they made on Saddam Hussein failed. He retaliated with chemical weapons. These pictures are of citizens of Ad Djail who were killed by the regime. That act was the act that was the main charge brought against Saddam Hussein when he was ultimately captured and taken to trial, was about the retaliation in Ad Djail. You can see where the old fuel tanks were. This was all just desert, but our location near that main supply route made it a good place for maintenance units to set up. So they built this facility to do maintenance on the vehicles that all the different countries that were there might need support. You can see in the background here, these basically containers that became your home, right? So initially, I slept up here on this roof on a cot with a mosquito net, with a ladder in the back to climb up and go down. But by the time we had been there for 5 or 6 months, we brought in some containers, so your quality of life as a soldier was better. This is my boss, Laura Loftus, the first combat engineer, female battalion commander, and a guy who worked for me, Dave Safner. At this point, I was the battalion executive officer, so I was there. I went from what I described as operations officer to the executive officer. Right outside, so on the map I showed you, there was a main road that went from, well, the main road had a side road that went to that airfield, and we were on that. And so lots of military vehicles, and so it was not uncommon for IEDs, the explosive devices, to be placed on those roads. So this is about 100 meters or so outside our front gate. You can see the damage that it does to a large vehicle. This is the recovery operation to do that. So, you know, and if you saw Hurt Locker, this is the explosive ordnance disposal guys. Schools were closed. Schools were looted. Garbage wasn't being picked up. The water supply system wasn't working well. In some cases because it was destroyed, in other cases because there was no one there to do it. And in a centralized government, the local town leaders were waiting to be told what to do. And we were like, well, there's no one right now to tell you what to do. There is no government to tell you to get some, and there's no money flowing. So it's like the U.S. and sort of coalition of forces would provide money to the government to say, let's pay some people, let's get them in garbage trucks, and let's restart the picking up garbage, or let's fix the water pump that broke and get water flowing again, and let's put windows and doors back in the building, fix some air conditioners, and open up some schools again. Let's try to get life going. That's the part that some of you ask, what did you like about being deployed? That feels good. That feels like you can see a difference being made. And you'll see that in a couple pictures in a minute. I mean, the challenge is, while you're doing that, there are still people who are not happy that you're there, that like the old regime. So whether that's the IEDs, whether that's sniper fire, any sort of operation like that. And so, or mortars, or another one, right? So there would be a truck with a mortar, which is, just a tube that lobs a explosive. They'll lob an explosive and take off. In the midst of trying to help, you are constantly have to be vigilant that not everyone wants your help. Some people would rather see your vehicle get blown up or whatever. And so that's the trade-off and the balance that you're living with. And the closest example to me was Eric Palavota, who's the soldier in the upper left there. That's him in his Humvee. He was a company commander, so I described how that worked. So he was outside the operating base more often, supporting and doing work. And he lived on a different FOB for a while with another unit that needed dedicated engineer support. And that operating base had mortars come, and he was killed. And so you're deployed in country, you lose a friend and a soldier in your unit. The protocol is that you have a service in theater within a few days. And so this is sort of you've probably seen this, sort of the typical setup: his helmet, his weapon, his dog tags, boots. People make remarks like you would at any funeral, but it's military protocol, so to speak. That's me at his service. There's another picture from that. This is so Eric was Bravo Company Commander, this was Alpha Company Commander. So, that's a hard part, of course, of any deployment. And it's made even more hard that he's sitting on his FOB and it's a mortar that gets lobbed in, and then there's nothing you can feel like you can do about it. There are instances I'm sure you could read about where those sorts of events trigger a retaliation by the U.S. military that is out of whack, I guess you could say. I mean, it's hard to put a value judgment on someone getting killed, but that then leads to other things that happen that feel like get used against you in a way that, you know what I mean? It's like a tit for tat sort of situation, and so that's hard. I'll show you a couple pictures of Adjugeo. This is me inside my Humvee, and I remember this is me because here's my kids. There's Emma, there's Ian, there's Isaac, there's my wife, right? But it's a town. It's a cool town. Ancient, been around a long time. If you've ever traveled to any third world country, however you want to describe that, but a country that is different than ours, it's got a vibe to it. And this is Adjugeo, and we spent months there. This is me, that's the mayor, these are some of the public works people, and every day it's like, what are we doing today? It's like, well, the water pump broke again. Okay, what are we doing to fix it? How are we gonna, well, we had the police force needs, there aren't any police. Well, we don't have anyone trained to be a police officer. Let's train the police officers. So we trained new Iraqi military. We didn't, but the U.S. did. but we would work with the police force as well. So all of those things are going on simultaneously, but you also work with and get to know these people, right? They wanted us to be a part of their community, the ones who valued the work that we were doing. And so this is a typical food spread, right? I mean, that's Laura, my boss. This is her interpreter, and then these are some of the local government leaders. Some are more, I'd say religious leaders, but sort of elders, if you will, in the community. And they wanted to spend time with us, and that is another takeaway for me. That was wonderful, right? You got to see inside another culture, nothing like ours, with people who you develop a relationship with that you care for. And so, again, regardless of some of the challenges on how or why we were there, this is a different thing. For me, this is, I don't have any control over that. I have control over what my mission was when I was on the ground, and the more I could get to know people, the more I felt like I was making a difference. This is one of the schools that we reopened. So again, you saw the original building we stayed in, so this is windows, doors, all that stuff back in, air conditioning, etc. We get school supplies brought over and given out. This is me scaring
young Dan.
So, I mean...
Caroline.
Huh?
It's like Caroline.
It's like Caroline, yeah.
Yeah. And so I mean, these are the things, these are the pictures and images that resonate with me when I reflect on my time there. This is outside the City Hall building where we spent so much time working with the mayor and the other people, right? And, I had no idea what I wish I knew I don't even know those kids' names. I just know I saw them every day. I'd give them some candy from my MRE, and they would want to take pictures and get more candy from my MREs. And, I wonder what their life is like. That's my family. One of you asked what was the most difficult part. I mean, losing a friend like Eric, of course, but also these pictures that year. Like anytime I see pictures from that year, like my boys played soccer on a team that had green and yellow checkerboard jerseys. I was not there to see that year. Like there's that whole era from that year that, that's the hard part. I could call my wife. I could call my wife more often and sooner than soldiers in some case, because I had a satellite phone early on in the deployment. She was the connection to all of the parents or the spouses of the soldiers, because my boss wasn't married. So usually the spouse, for all the non-deploying spouses, organizes that. So, my wife got thrust into that role unwillingly because I was the XO and second in command, and there was no other spouse, on top of raising 3 kids at the time. A couple of you asked about, was I ever involved with JSOC? And I wasn't directly, but we often would be on call to go support a mission if JSOC got in trouble, right? And I would see JSOC operators because they had beards and they weren't dressed like us. Like, it'd be like someone coming here out of dress code, and you're like, what's that? How come this guy didn't have to shave? And their uniforms all goofy looking. Why? How come I can't wear a soft hat instead of my Kevlar or whatever? But there is some friction. There is friction. There's a hierarchy among soldiers. If you're like a regular Army guy, there's a hierarchy in the Army between infantry and armor. That's important, and the rest of y'all are supporters. Depending on how you interact with people, that could feel icky. But then even in the Army, there are Rangers and the 82nd Airborne. Those are higher, more elite. But then above them, there are Special Forces. And then above Special Forces, there's like Delta Force. And then above Delta Force now, there's JSOC. And you're like, there's whole hierarchy. And so my interaction often was a little bit like, oh yeah, here come the JSOC guys to swoop in. They get a little intelligence. We've been operating in this region for months. They're going to swap in, tell us to get out of the way. They're going to do their job. They're going to capture maybe a high-value target, was what they were called, right? The deck of cards that was talked about in the movie. Like I have that deck of cards somewhere. And, you know, your job is to do the rebuilding, but also if your unit would capture someone that's in that deck of cards, you feel like that's an important part of your job. Like, it would be looked at as something that your unit did well. But then, so you spend all this time trying to do all of those things, and then JSOC swoops in and does it and goes and takes all the glory, so to speak. You know, is how a soldier might describe that. And so that have been my interaction. Have my opinion changed since I've been serving? Heck yeah. I mean, a little bit, right? I mean, I think naturally, when you get to be older, your perspective changes. As your government and administrations change, your opinions change. As the world changes, your opinions change. Technology, the way the Army runs, all those things are vastly different. I mean, the way this school is run today is vastly different than 18 years ago when I got here. Not because of the leadership, just the way we do school. We didn't have Google Classroom when I got here. We didn't have lots of the thoughts about how we teach were different. And so the military is the same. And so the role of the military also changes over time. One of you asked, would I be comfortable sending my child into the military? Yeah, some of them.
Which ones, Dan?
Well, hang on, but he would never do it, right? I mean, it's not, my decision about my kids serving in the military isn't about necessarily the state of the military. I think the military needs good human beings in it. But it needs people who want to be there, who have a skill set that's beneficial there. A couple of my kids would have no interest doing it, and why would I want them to serve in something that is not them at all? So I'm not anti-military at all, but I don't like, my oldest son I think he's an optometrist, I think he could have been an optometrist for the Army, which would have been a great way for him to serve, but also do what he was passionate about, not have loads of debt from optometry school, but that wasn't his path. So, I thought that was a insightful question. Yeah?
Did you ever have any moments that were like challenging your morals, maybe?
Yeah. So someone said, what was the hardest decision you had to make throughout your tours? That's a heck of a question. Like, you know, when we were early on, when we were driving through northern Baghdad, and someone says, we think there's a group of people who are meeting to sort of plan to set up an ambush on some supply route or something. And you get that intel from another local who might be 100% right, or who might have a grudge against that person, so they're going to use you to accomplish some of their dirty work, so to speak, right? But so you're put in a situation where you're not 100% sure the information is correct, and then you find yourself in someone's home that might have weapons in it, that might be an ambush or a trap, or might be a ruse someone else has played on you. And if you're soldiers, so I'm not the one early on, people would kick in a door and go in, and later, and this was the same in Panama, it's like, that's not serving us well. 99% of the places we go are sympathetic to us being there, want to help us, they want the one or two bad actor in their little village to be removed. But if now we've angered, as the documentary talked about, you start self-perpetuating anti-American sentiment by being a stereotypical, obnoxious American. And so there were times where you're in a home and you're balancing that, and you see a soldier, be rough or disrespectful of someone's property, or just as another human, that doesn't feel good, right? And then you understand where it comes from. We had an officer who had a unit, so it's a unit we supported. They lost a soldier, and when they went to try to capture the person who inflicted that death, civilians were killed, And there were, not unlike some of the things in the documentary, the way the story got reported wasn't factual. And I mean, that wasn't me involved in the discipline of that or anything, but you see that, and then you hear soldiers that hear about it, and it's like, how do you deal with that, right? How do you talk about what's right and in an area where most things are pretty gray when it comes down to what you're doing? It's like, we have a mission to do this thing that's based on potentially accurate knowledge, and you might not even be at the right house because they told you it's the third door on the left, and it's all, you're like, I'm pretty sure it's this one, but how do you know for sure? So I think for me, those are the sorts of things, right? Like I didn't, because I wasn't the one that's kicking in a door or going in, often I would come in after. I felt like my role was more overt when we were in active jail, where I was working with the local government. But that didn't seem morally challenging. It was felt morally uplifting because I was helping schools reopen and people to try to get some semblance of their life back. And so that felt good.